I'm trying to find a moderate voice who I can trust. That's why I do listen to Vinay Prasad. I listen to Dr. Marty McCary. I listen to a lot of experts that we've had on this show who I try to find who are, I think, honest brokers. And what those people are saying is that, like I said in the Talking Points memo, 1 dose is far less problematic than 2 doses.
Right.
Boys are at increased risk versus girls. And Pfizer may be mildly better than Moderna. You know, some countries overseas are saying no Moderna at all for that age group. But you heard the deaths I just went through. Most of them are Pfizer. And the only reason we have those reported in the news for the most part, and the reason that many of them are overseas, is our media and our public health officials here won't say the vaccine led to somebody's death because they say it's impossible to prove. But it's like, okay, perfectly healthy kid gets the Moderna vaccine or the Pfizer vaccine on Tuesday and dies on Friday of myocarditis and had no problem with myocarditis or heart health issues prior to getting the vaccine. You have to make a deduction. The authorities overseas are much quicker to say, well, obviously that's vaccine-induced myocarditis that led to the person's death. Over here, we're so pro-vax. You can't say that. We don't know what caused it.
Right. Well, and what the answer will be, and it's right. If you're doing your risk analysis, they will say, well, this is a very small risk. That's part of the discussion, right?
Mm-hmm,
but we
should
have the discussion about the risk. And by the way, we've spent 2 years talking about a minuscule risk to young, healthy children of bad effects from COVID, right? So I don't want to hear just one side of the risks. I would like to balance them. Because that's what grown-ups do. And they don't tell people to shut up about their experiences.
To the point you just raised, you know, I hadn't even thought about it this way, but they exaggerate the risk of dying from COVID for children by overcounting kids who die with COVID. You know, they go into the hospital for something else, they happen to have COVID and they die. They count them as deaths from COVID and do the funny numbers like you point out the woman in Georgia found them doing.
Yeah.
So one way, they want to inflate artificially the number of kids dying from COVID. But the other way, they won't count anything unless they have proof positive. Well, how do you get proof positive? It's like, that's why the Thailand study is so interesting, because they took kids they knew had not had COVID and did not have cardiovascular issues, then gave them the vaccine, and then saw the increase in myocarditis and cardiac issues. Like that, I'm not talking about deaths there. I'm talking about heart complications from the COVID vaccine. That's as good as you're going to get. And then if those kids wind up dying from myocarditis, what are they going to say? We have no idea what caused it.
Right. Well, and Prasad calls it a safety signal. And that safety signal is something you should pay attention to and you should adjust accordingly, which is the thing we have been totally incapable of doing in American public health since this began. You see places where like Sweden and Denmark, they'll go, oh, well, maybe we should just reduce it to 1 shot for teenagers. Maybe we should warn teenage boys that perhaps the second one is problematic. Give people this information. They don't mandate them for young people who are at very low risk and yet face different risks. But they say you can, or sometimes they even argue against it. But just like with school closings, we are on a completely different page than the rest of public health throughout the developed world. And it's this sort of maniacal, myopic focus on only one risk, as if COVID is the only thing that can hurt your children. It's just not true. And grownups weigh risks. They don't just consider one.
Mm-hmm. Think about how, I don't know about you, but I know lots of women who postpone their annual physical because they don't want to get on the scale. Yeah. Think about the parents who are now going to be postponing the wellness visit for their kids because they know their doctor is going to say, well, not only should he get the MMR or does he have to have the following vaccines, you got to get that COVID vaccine. CDC recommended it. And now as a result, our state has made it part of the mandatory list. You can't go to school without this. And they use the CDC knows this is where it's going. And still those, I almost said efforts. I'm trying to clean up my mouth a little bit, slightly. They voted 15-0 for this, 15-0.
Well, and if you watch them discuss these things that they vote unanimously on, they don't feel as confident as the vote reflects, right? But you have to actually watch that discussion. Some of this, I think, is just like pressure, social pressure. And they're like, well, I'm not sure I'm going to raise a bunch of issues with this, but then I'm just going to vote yes. And it is disingenuous to say that this does not lead to mandates. Okay, sure, they don't make the actual mandate, but this is what states and school systems and counties and cities will use to say, this is what we use to justify what we require for activities for school, as if children haven't had enough things taken away from them. In DC, they tried to do this before school started this year and realized it would cut out about 40% of the Black student community, which is a problem. Yeah. And so they postponed it till January. What happens now? Perhaps they look at the CDC and go, look, now we have our justification. And again, when you make that decision to skip the wellness visit, if you're afraid about being pressured about this particular thing, if you have justified concerns about this particular vaccination, guess what you're going to end up missing? Your MMR update. The ones that are the traditional real problems that can cause real problems if we skip them en masse are going to be the things you miss. And I have genuine concerns
those are real
about
vaccines.
What people think about the rest of this.
And those are real vaccines. Those are things that will actually prevent you from getting measles, mumps, rubella. Unlike this vaccine, which will not prevent you or your child from getting COVID at all, despite what the CDC originally said. So you can stick your kid with this needle, and he can very well get COVID anyway. I was way down the rabbit hole on McCary and Prasad and all these guys, and there was something of Vinay's. It's spell Vinay, but it's pronounced Vinay. Forgive me, I always forget. On his Substack, he posted an article from a third-year medical student, and he was saying this guy's got more sense than most public health officials out there today. And this third-year medical student had taken a look at the data and the studies and was saying that these vaccines for children and teenagers and young people like him, he's third-year med student, so he's young 20s, have caused more hospitalizations than they have prevented. That is what the studies seem to show, that they've caused more hospitalizations than they've prevented. And Vinay was saying, I'd be happy to have this guy in the medical profession and treating my own son. This is what is a sensible conclusion after looking at all the data. And yet you look at your school administrator and he just says, CDC. CDC.
They've already been boosting college students as a requirement to come back to school, which, by the way, I ain't paying money for that. My tens of thousands of dollars to send this kid off and boost him before he can go sit in 3 masks in a virtual classroom. But the cost benefit analysis on that is not good. But this is where we are. That, Paul Offit, who's the most pro-vax guy there is I don't know, boosters for young people, that doesn't make that much sense.
Doing?
That's not a direct quote. I'm paraphrasing. But when he is telling you that, it's a real issue. And it's why can't we calibrate to risk? Why couldn't we admit that an 80-year-old was facing different risk than a 5-year-old? Why couldn't we say that outdoors was pretty daggone safe and indoors was not? There were so many missed exits along the way.
And the media went along with it. Our industry was complicit and remains complicit. This is what's so disturbing. You stick a toe in these waters of I'm concerned. I'm seeing very troubling data. And it's obviously there's the disinformation dozen and what's happened to all of them. But that's wrong. Our industry we get paid to be curious. We get paid to say, bullshit, that's not part of the accepted narrative. And instead say, oh, that's interesting. Where are you getting that from? Let's look at that. Let's go down that rabbit hole. Why aren't they giving us the data behind these clinical trials? But you're right, we should have that. And I do think it's one of the reasons why we just saw that poll. There was one saying nearly 60% have absolutely no faith in the media, zero faith in the 60% of Americans, and one showing 38%, as low as 38% have no faith in the media. Independents have no faith in the media. Republicans have no faith in the media. The only people with any faith left are some of the Democrats, MK, but it's all connected.
They're working hard on it, trying to pull that number up.
Well, of course, because it's all their narratives.
Yeah. Look, skepticism is good for you, and it's good to apply it to many large institutions, all of the government institutions, and yet media is often very selective about how it applies skepticism, or else it would listen to some of these discussions and scratch some of the data and go, oh, wait, this is not exactly what we were being presented. But they don't do that in particular cases. And this is one of those particular cases. By the way, leave it to the media to have like 80+% say that they're a threat to democracy. It's like the only thing we have bipartisan agreement on, apparently, in one poll. And then in the Gallup poll, it's like 7% have a great amount of trust for media. And media is like, awesome job, guys.
Bond Charge is a holistic wellness brand with a huge range of evidence-based products to optimize your life in every way. Founded on science and inspired by nature, all Bond Charge products adopt ancestral ways of living in our modern-day world. From blue light glasses to red light therapy to EMF management and circadian-friendly lighting, Bond Charge products help you naturally address the issues of our modern-day way of life effortlessly. All right, now listen, I want to show you the pair that I wear when I am working on my computer and sometimes my iPhone. Look at these. Aren't these cute? I like these. They're so cute. You can get like stylish, where you have like, these have the tortoise shell. I kind of like them. Kind of saucy. Makes me feel like Bono. They come in non-prescription, prescription, and reading options. And Bond Charge also has other amazing products like low blue light bulbs, red light therapy devices, EMF, 5G protection, and 100% blackout sleep masks, all backed by science. They can ship worldwide in rapid time, and most importantly, they have easy returns and exchanges. In addition to these, I wear an orange pair when I'm watching TV, and it just seems like too bright. Sometimes it bothers my eyes. I got my kids wearing them. Doug wears them. I love these guys. They actually have great options. So check it out for yourself. Bond Charge, B-O-N, Charge, CHARGE.com/MK, and use that coupon code MK to save 20%. Don't forget, bondcharge.com/MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.